Howdy, all you delicious people. I am here today to review Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3 of Real Monsters. So, I feel that we need to address these bad boys, because of course, a lot of people would probably be upset with the fact that I'm not looking directly into the camera with my eyeballs, and I probably am. But here is the thing with that. Often I am to go on and wear sunglasses, and I feel if anybody's gone on and consistently, thoroughly, and deeply watched these reviews, they would know this, because I've stated this. At some points I do go on and get migraines just because of the colors of my eyes. But then also, there are certain points where my eyes are to just get very, very tired. And sunglasses actually, bizarrely, help me out with continuing to be able to keep my eyes open and be able to just kind of focus in, bizarrely. I don't know what it is, but it just is to help me when I'm doing these videos far too late than they actually should be doing or be done. And really, like, it's all about just like, hey man, just kind of just bang this out. Just do it. Just focus enough. Just get it all in there. Just get what you can. So first off, I want to apologize, but otherwise, like, hey man, I want to do this video. I really had gone on to watch these 3 episodes, and I want to talk about them because I'm just really recreating my youth through this channel right now. All these new releases, Fashad, all them. Like, I want to go on and get back to my roots, so to speak. And hopefully, like, you'll understand and you want to go with me through this bizarre journey. Or maybe you are to have any number of connections with any of this kind of content. And so that's what I'm doing here. That's all that I'm trying to just accomplish and achieve and believe I can do well with what I'm doing. So anyways, firstly, I want to go on and say whoever had gone on to do anything with the show, creators, writers, voiceover people, anybody in between, animators, whatever. I want to hope that, like, this was like a labor of love kind of show, and with these 3 episodes, it really comes off that way. Because I feel like a lot of characters were having so much fun with this kind of show, and during the time of this being a thing that existed, this was so unique compared to anything else that was out there. And to really look back on it now, I could see like how different it was then compared to now, having like a few things to go on and compare this show to. Like Monsters Inc. would be the obvious. There was to be the Howie Mandel, Ben Savage, like Monster Under the Bed movie, I think was maybe somewhere along the lines the title of that film. It's been a while. But I'd gone on to watch a YouTube thing of Howie Mandel does stuff, and at some point Howie goes on to just talk about that film and the process of makeup. Him wearing makeup of all people, but he did it. Good for him. And also, like, there's some inkling of me wanting to probably compare this show to Nightmare Before Christmas. Beyond there just being the Halloween town in there, and eventually the wanting to just kind of scare kids during a holiday season and whatever. Like, there's more than just that. If anything, there's certain monsters that I would probably want to go on and compare to from Nightmare Before Christmas to this content. But so after going on and stating all of that jazz, all of that stuff, let's talk about these 3 episodes. So, I want to go on and I want to state right out of the gate, thumbs ups. These were 3 episodes that I felt were okay to solid okay. And that's still good in my eyes. My sunglassed eyes. And really, I want to say that I felt that I'm like kind of lowballing right now because I feel that there's hopefully something better down the road. Because I was like, man, like these episodes, like kind of right out of the gate, they're very simple. They're really carried by this theme. They're really like having some shock value, and there is some kind of simplicity to it. Like we start to see kind of a pattern kind of emerging with certain characters where we're starting to see that Ickis is to kind of have this pattern of kind of growing very large, or Oblina, I believe that's how to pronounce her name. We'll figure that out when we get to the actual cast list and whichever. Like she like is a transforming kind of monster, and then Crumb is to really rely on his stench or his smell to kind of do these kind of gags. And we'll see kind of later when this couple is trying to just smooch it out, how all of a sudden Crumb gets in the way of that, and he's to kind of douse them with his armpit smell. And so these 3 episodes, let's kind of break down the episodes a little bit and kind of tee these episodes up, and then go into full on spoilers. So I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. I don't know. Fly! Fly away, hands! I'm delirious. It's good. It's okay. So, where can you go on and get this show for free? So, firstly, besides going onto a Google and seeing how many number of apps may dare in fact have this show for probably a subscription that you would have to pay for, maybe like a Paramount. Paramount tends to have a lot of Nickelodeon stuff. I just gone on to check Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Orig cartoon, and the original cartoon is on Paramount. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I guess that's where all the Nickelodeon stuff is starting to land. But man, where can you go on and get the Real Monsters for absolutely free? You can go on to an app called Zelifonic, Zelivonic, which is to be available on a Google Play Store. Hopefully it's still available on that Google Play Store. If not, then by golly, maybe you can go into a Google search and have an APK download for Zelifonic. The next one is Manic, Mannic, and that will hopefully still be available on a Google Play Store. Movie Box. There might be a Movie Box 2 or some other goofy other thing like 1, 2, 3 movies. I don't know. There's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of goofy Goomba things that exist out there that you may go on and download. There at one point was an app that I think was called Coma. Coma. But hey, I don't think it really exists anymore. There are other things like Yes Movies. There's a ton of other things that I've used at my time of which that I've done this, and not all of them are the best, but hey, I will digress here. So, let's go on to the hopefully last one, because I've spit all these things out of there. Let's go on and let's talk about going onto a Google search and going into a app called HGO Box. which is going to have to be through a APK download. And HBO Box usually has a pretty fat variety of a number of shows and movies you can see for absolutely free. Every single one of these apps will probably dare, in fact, have you go on to be watching a ad throughout the films, but it's all for free. It's better than going on and paying some fee just so you can go on and see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Secret of the Ooze. Why do I have to go on to Amazon and pay $5 for a movie I just have right here on my shelf? I have the collection because that's how I love my Ninja Turtles, in a collection. I have the whole entire disc copy of the original cartoon because at one point I really wanted to thumb through that bad boy, but then eventually I found that there's a convenient app for me to just go on and watch the whole ordeal. So I'm like, okay, well, I have a slew of just DVDs and Blu-rays that are just sitting on a shelf, sadly, now. Because I'm like, I can just watch anything on an app. What do I need disc copies anymore? Ugh. But it's all about the collection. It's all about the collection. And also, who knows? Like, Skynet could happen, wipe out all the apps. I don't know. Or be back to the Stone Age. I'm sorry. I'm going into a rant, and I shouldn't. I should be getting this done as quickly as possible. So, these 3 episodes. The very first one is to tie into a little kid called Nikki. Nikki is to have a older brother named Jake. And so Nikki is to be taking out the garbage one day to stumble upon a monster called Aaahh. Aaahh is to be the purple one out of 3, who is to be very much gremlin-ish looking like. More than likely was to be my main hesitation originally upon seeing this show, but I had kind of seen flashes of it at some point. When I was the youth, the youngin', the slim, trim baby boy of past. So, what am I saying here? I don't even know. So, Nikki is to go on and stumble upon the Aaahh monster, and is to turn around and want to just become this monster for Halloween, realizing that it could be the most unique thing out there compared to everyone else. So this entire episode eventually becomes this body swapping episode, or body switching episode, as it's to be called, the switching hour. And we'd go on to have Nikki, who is to be living the monster lifestyle for a day, and we have Aaahh, who's to be living the human lifestyle for a day. And eventually the whole real thread of it all is to be the older brother Jake out of this whole story, and eventually there is to be a resolution for that. So, getting into the second episode, we start to see that these singular episodes become 2-parters. Don't know why, but they just end up kind of breaking down like that. Maybe there was to just be like a kind of like exchange of like trying to figure out how to write these shows, but maybe they just kind of came out shorter, or maybe like, I don't know. It's just unusual, but hey, it is what it is. So the second episode is a tie-in to a kid named Bradley. Bradley is to be a monster kind of book reading kid who's to show a little bit of that crack. And I'm not talking about the drug. And so Bradley ends up going to bed one night, and he is to stumble upon Aaahh. Aaahh is trying to scare him with his fangs, and Bradley is to kind of just get up. He's to start to hear this noise, and Bradley is to actually have scared Ickis. Ickis runs away and is to leave a memento behind of his questionable unhaunting. So when Ickis is to make his way back to what I would call his scare school, because that's what I would possibly have tried to figure out what this environment in my brain is to really just be called, even though that's probably not the legitimate title. My bad for anybody who's a Real Monster fan who's to break down what every single little bit of all this stuff is. My bad. But so we'd have Ickis, who is to be kind of forced through this chair that is to have this kind of flashbacking of memory of what had occurred of that haunt. And Grumble is to go on and spot this memento, which then has Ickis to be forced to try and accomplish getting this memento back, and is to consistently fail miserably and have forcibly his friends go on and try and accomplish this task. So within the third episode, because the second episode is a two-parter, but then like it almost kind of feels like one flow of an episode because it's still to tie into the Brad character, or the Bradley character, my bad. So the third episode is to be a Crumb episode. So we'd come to find that in the beginning of the third episode, it's Crumb's birthday, his B-day, his good times, his party. So Crumb is going through this amusement park to come to find that he is to be outstenched by a kind of freak show-ish like character. Crumb makes his way to this freak show-ish like character to come to find that Crumb is to lose his mojo against this monstrous like slug of a being. And so this is the Scylla gets his groove back. Austin Powers getting his mojo kind of thing going on here to really have Crumb figure out a way to motivate himself to stay within the scare school instead of going off onto his own path of working on these other tasks, let's just say. And then the very last bit of the third episode is to have Crumb go to Hollywood, needing to go on and replace this this monster that is not working out, and he eventually is to seemingly be very successful at being this monster, but he barely scares anybody. Nobody's actually really scared of Crumb. So Crumb sees this as like, well, what do I even need to go back to scare school for? Like, I'm a big hit. And it's like, well, hey, like, you're still a real monster. So it gets to a point where Crumb is realizing, like, you know what, like I'm not really happy with what I'm doing. So, like, there ends up just kind of being a finish up, which I hope I'll get to. Like, I'm getting way too much in the details of all of these three episodes. I should kind of pull back a lot more, but if anything, I'm kind of leaving a little bit to just kind of be, hey, let's go into spoilers. So with that said, solid okay episodes. So let's go on and let's pause this video and get into full-on spoilers. So it is spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil these three episodes. All right. Firstly, I want to apologize for all the rambling. I don't know why I have so much energy. I don't know what I'm doing. So let's go into it. Perfect. He was actually funny this time. All the other times, he's just bore, and I'm just wanting to just click away as soon as possible. Sorry. Anyways, here we are. So, let's go into it. So, the very first episode is to be called The Switching Hour. So, in the very beginning of this, we'd have Nikki. Nikki is to be taking the garbage out and is to open the lid of the garbage to see Ipkiss, who is to be looking out at Nikki, like, ha! Nikki, of course, immediately freaks because he's just kind of like the guy who had gone on and seen the monstrous being on the side of the plane and is freaking out. So Nikki is to run off to the door and is to try to open it, and comes to find his older brother is right nearby the door. Nikki is to have been screaming and hollering, so Jake is to come to the door, and Nikki is to go on and to explain to Jake what he had gone on and seen. So Jake and both Nikki investigate, and when they open the garbage lid, they see nothing. So Jake is to go on and tell Nikki, it's like, oh, you got scared by a bunny. So that, of course, goes on to have us realize that Ipkiss, I'm watching The Mask now, smoking. Ipkiss had snuck out and was to have made his way back to his junkyard. So we'd come to find, as the three main uh, monsters are to make their way to their class, we'd have Ickis, Alblina, and Crumb going to class, and these two monsters are going on, and they're boasting, and like, well, hey, like, Halloween is coming up soon, so I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna like scare kids so bad that even their shadows get scared. And like, these monsters don't have names. Like, legitimately, like, their monsters are Monster 1 and Monster 2. There's a Monster 3, there's a Monster 4. Legitimately, like, there's very few actual monsters that have legitimate names. Like Slimeball or Snork. There's Snorch. Man. So I'd gone on and had to Google all of this and found out there's a character list somewhere that had like a list of just everybody. I'm like, good, because that's how I always need to approach every single one of these. So if anybody's to ever have struggles with character lists on an anime or a animated anything, like, just kind of search long enough on Google, you'll find a whole list of characters. You can be like, oh yeah, that one, that one, that one. Especially if you don't know anything from superhero stuff, because maybe you didn't read a comic book. Anyways, moving on. So the two monsters, they're trying to scare these shadows. So one tries to scare a shadow, it works, the shadow runs off, but then the shadow comes back with a group of other shadowy beings, and so the one monster runs off, the one monster looks at the shadows, he runs off. So now the three main monsters making their way to this scare school. So we'd have uh, Grumble. Grumble is to be the teacher of this scare school. And at some points, he's to just kind of take no from anybody. And at some points, when certain characters are to just kind of roll in and like, hey, my nose is running. And like we have this monster who's chasing after his own nose. Like Grumble just takes him, eats him. He doesn't put enough guff through anybody, or he just like it feels like he has an ear or an eye for everything. He's a very confident man. He really is. So Grumble goes on to tell the class, it's like, hey guys, like last week's midterms were poor, so guess what? Like, I don't think that you can scare the pants off of anybody, so I'm not going to allow you to. You guys are all going to go on and not be able to scare or lick anybody on Halloween. And if anybody goes on and tries it, like, you're going to have to deal with Snorch. And I'm going to have to discipline you. And this and that. So we turn around and have our monster just being like, psh, like, this guy is thinking that he's gonna like keep us away from like scaring kids on Halloween. Like, are you serious? So they all decide to go on and sneak away to this one location, and we're having some people plotting and planning, or kind of razzing people for like kind of having a hesitation about kind of sneaking out for Halloween. So we have some people starting to organize and plan. And so Ickis is talking uh, to his friends, and he's saying like, you know what, I have a bunch of uh, pencils that are just kind of sitting in my stomach funny. Like, I don't know, like I don't know if I can go out tonight. So we have one of the monsters going on and calling Ickis like, hey, pencil breath. Like, do you really think that you're going to go on and go out tonight? And Ickis is like, well, yeah, I think I will. So our three main characters make their way down this sewer pipe, which basically means they're going to be crawling through a bunch of crap, a bunch of dookie, a bunch of doo doo, a bunch of fluff, a bunch of number two. So we'd have our characters going through this drain, and Crumb is having a heck of time with going through here. He's just having a lot of fun, having all these bugs crawl around his face, and he's loving it. So they get through this drain, and they're seeing Snorch off, just kind of making a perimeter, just kind of looking around. So they do this one trick shot that eventually is to kind of just take out Snorch. I think it has something to do with the toilet. A toilet? A toilet thing you flush. So Q are three main characters. It seems that they're to be the only real monsters that decided to actually get out and accomplish so. So they make their way out onto Halloween. And so now we have to get back to the Jake and Nikki story. So Jake is dressed as a pirate and is to make his way to Nikki, just like, oh my god, like I'm forced to just kind of babysit my younger brother instead of going on and doing what I want to do and wreaking havoc and chaos. And I feel that also Nikki's gonna like stop everything that I'm gonna try to do along the way. So, because Nikki, we come to find, has like a whole like inner like jacket full of just toilet paper. He's gonna toss it at people and just have a good time with all of his pranks. So we have Jake making his way to Nikki and just being like, well, hey, I guess I'm just gonna like be babysitting you tonight. And like Jake continues to just kind of make fun of Nikki's costume, and So they go on to trick or treat. So the three monsters here, the three monster tiers, I don't know what else to just call them. Like, I could go on and say real monsters, but that just, like, there's no, like, abbreviation that is a shortened the name of which that I can call these characters. So I just say the main monsters. Probably sounds quicker than anything else. Main monsters. So main monsters make their way into checking someone trick or treat. One of these homes is just to give up pennies, and so the kids are to be very upset and goes on to tell the main monsters like, hey, like, this woman is only giving up pennies, like, like, go to another house. So the main monsters are just like, well, like, what did they just do? Like, did they say, like, beat my meat? What did they say? Did they say smell my feet? Did they say give me a treat? Give me a... And we'd have Ickis, who's like, well, no, like, I think it was prick your feet. It sounds like it has to be the thing that they said. So they're like, okay, we'll go by that. So all three of the monsters go to this house and they're like, prick my feet. And we have Hare who opens the door. Her name is bizarrely Hare. It's listed on this thing. I don't know why. Her name is this thing. I don't know. I don't have a lot of this thing, but it's there. It's Hare. So, anyways, moving on. Hare goes on, looks at all the monstrous kids. Is like, wow, you guys are creative. Herb, you need to come in here and you need to see these kids. Hercules, Hercules. So Herb comes in. He's looking up and down on these kids. And he's like, okay, gremlin. Okay, candy cane. All right. Hey, you. You in the middle. You freaking smell. Like, it seems like somebody died in your costume. Like, clean that out. It's not exactly what he said, but like, man, like, that's what he should have said. That's how he should have broke it down. Gremlin. Which one are you, Gizmo or Stripe? Which one? So they give him the pennies. They close the door, and then the monsters are just like, well, like, hey, this candy was good. How about we try the exact same house again and just prick our feet with them? So they knock at the door, prick my feet. The Hare opens the door. It's like, hey, like, the first time was nice, but like the second time, like, come on, guys. Like, I'm not just gonna keep handing these things out to you. So the three monsters are like, okay, like, I guess we'll just go to the next door, the next neighbor, the next whoever. So they go to this following house. So here's where Nikki is to make it to this house also, and Jake has his toilet paper with all of his friends. He's like, yeah, like, when these kids come out, we're gonna just toss this toilet paper out of the fun, whatever. So Nikki goes to this Halloween party, and it seems that there are to be people there that actually like his costume, and he's like, yeah, like, all right. So he meets a girl there, like, maybe he's gonna get some digits, I don't know. Maybe he'll slide into some kind of, like, base somewhere. But anyways, like, this isn't that kind of show. It should be. Anyway, these kids are these youngins are far too young. So we'd have the main monsters making their way to this party also by knocking on this door, prick my feet, and the kid who answers the door, it's like, oh, hey, yeah, that's a good fun joke. the party's downstairs. And so, like, this guy just this youngin just opens his door to whoever. It could have been the gremlins. You could have gotten them wet and could have multiplied and could have just ruined your night. Could be the Terror Dog. Could be, I don't know. You don't know. Can't trust anybody besides your twice removed uncle, son, nephew. Anyways, son's nephew. Anyway, so we go into this party and we're getting some games going on here. And so this one kid wants to try this game where he's wanting to get this really just this kind of goofy things of food that he can just kind of grab closest to this table and kind of pass it around and state like it's the bowels of this or the snot of that. And eventually there is a rotation going on here, and Crumb is just taking these items and he's digesting them. It's like, oh, I've had better. Oh, that didn't age well. So Crumb's turn is up, so he decides that he's going to pass his own eyeballs around. By the time that it gets to this girl, the lights flash on, and the one boy is like, hey, what's going on down here? So the girl looks down at what is to be legitimately eyeballs, and she's like, ah, and she drops the eyeballs. Her screaming leads everybody else to just be getting out of there, just all frightened and terrified. So Crumb is just like, well, what is it? It's just eyeballs. Come on. It's just my balls. It's just my big balls. So the kids are all screaming. Toilet paper's flying outside. So at some point, the main three attraction here are to kind of all kind of bolt for it and run for it. And Oblina and Crumb are running, and they're thinking that Ickis is behind them. But then all of a sudden, Ickis is in front of them. It's like, wait a minute, how did you get here so quickly? Ickis instead is to be stopped by Jake's friend, and it's to be grabbed, and it's like, okay, hey, you're coming with me. Dead or alive, you're coming with me. RoboCop. So Crumb and Oblina, I have to go on and check the name every single time I'm to go on and state this, because heaven forbid I know how to pronounce this name whatsoever. Oblina! So the two monsters are looking at Nikki in costume. And so Oblina is like, hey man, I would love to go on and give those kids a what for, yada. And so she's like, you know what, if I would want to go back, like I would want to go on and try to scare them. And so she starts to transform into all these monsters. And Nick is to freak out and to faint and to be like, ugh. And so Oblina and Crumb are kind of having to carry Nikki back to their junkyard, to their oasis, to their hideaway. And Oblina's like, well, yeah, like maybe this whole night was far too stressful for Ickis. Maybe like we should have given him more of a holiday that would be easier to handle, like a Groundhog's Day. So Ickis is still with Jake and his friends, and because Ickis is starting to like struggle away from this group, they mummify him with this toilet paper and continue on to parties and such. So we'd have, of course, the cliche of there being way too long of a line in a bathroom, or at some point toilet paper being running out by how many people are to probably go into a bathroom via a party. So one person is saying like, well, hey, like I don't have any more toilet paper, so he grabs the toilet paper from the one the one monstrous guy who's dressed as a mummy. I think at also one point, one person was to have turned to Ickis as he was to be a mummy. It's like, hey man, like I'm sorry you didn't win the the costume contest. Like man, like your costume wasn't that great. So, anyways, moving on. So Ickis at one point is to go underneath the bunk beds, and Jake is to be just kind of poking the stick at Ickis, and Ickis just breaks it off. He eats it, and Jake is to go to his mom. It's like, hey mom, uh, like Nikki broke the broom, and Ickis is just like, oh my god, Oblina and Crom, like, can you just save me? Figure out where I am. So the following morning is to get ready to get started. So following day, Oblina and Crom are to wake up, and so Nikki is still like realizing that he's in this environment that he's in. He's still terrified, and then Oblina finally realizes like, oh, this isn't Ickis. Like you're just some kid. And so Nikki has to go on and explain that he's like, well, yeah, like I dressed up as Ickis because I saw him before, and so they're like, oh, okay. So Ickis goes on and is to kind of wake up for his day, and he's still, it seems, wearing his costume, and so Jake has to point that out. The mom, of course, is to be very upset with Ickis because it's like, well, hey, like you gotta go on and put on normal clothes. You're not getting any breakfast. So Ickis goes on to uh, put on a barrage of clothes, like swimsuits, dresses, an odd assortment of clothes that make no rational sense. But then eventually he finds his cap and he's like, all right, this works somehow, even though like my entire head is just not really fitting this costume that I'm to present myself with to Clark Kent myself. So Ickis makes his way back to the dining table, and the further and further he talks, the mother ends up realizing, like, well, hey, like, Nikki, do you have a frog in your throat? And so Ickis goes on to just open his mouth, and an entire frog just comes flying out and smashes all these dishes and stuff on the table. Jake ends up getting upset, assuming that there has to just be something wrong with Nikki, and Ickis is just like, no, like, so Jake and Nikki, who is Ickis, leave for their day, and it seems that Nikki's mom has to want a little bit of sugar. So we'd have Ickis go on and kiss Nikki's mom with a frog that comes out of Ickis's mouth, and then he leaves. It's funny also, the mom talks about cooties and not having them, and so Ickis is like, well, hey, you want to borrow mine? So Ickis leaves, goes to school. So let's go on and let's talk about the Nikki monster for a day adventure. So Nikki is to have at some point been home and is to have somehow scared his cat, and the cat is to go flying up in the air. So Nikki is to, of course, be easily scared by a number of these monsters that are just coming springing at him with rats and all kinds of things. So Nikki is to want to latch on hard to Oblina and Crumb, but then they smell, so he's like, maybe not too close. So we'd have Crumble that makes his way into class. I don't know, I'm doing music here. I don't know why I'm doing it. So I think there is also a point where I think there's a monster that is to write upon his hand, like the Grumble bites, and he tears off the skin of his hand to then pass this off to the rest of the monsters. And Grumble finds it, and he's like, "Yes, I do bite." But I feel that that probably isn't in this episode. But man, does it happen at some point. So while there is to be Nikki being Ickis, we'd immediately have the Grumble that is to want to brain scan Ickis to see who he has scared. Because probably out of everybody, it seems that Ickis is to be kind of notched down as the weakest one of the possible group. So Oblina and Crumb are to consistently try to swerve Grumble to not do Ickis, to not have him do anything today, to cut down on certain bugs and all these kind of usual normal things that would be incorporated in the Ickis daily life. So but Nikki is forced into the chair anyways. He's forced to showcase his memory, and we are shown that Nikki had scared this cat. Have it go flying, and Crumble's like, all right, like the best scare that I've seen to you in a while. Ickis, like, man, like, what a good, like, kind of jump that you had there for that cat. So, the move on, after Grumble is to try to give Nikki a treat, and Crumb ends up kind of taking it with his tongue and eating it. So Grumble at one point is to also have this kind of howling choir. Bizarrely, we keep having like Crumble needing at some points for this choir to just kind of belt out these howls. I don't know why, but I guess it just becomes a consistent thing here. Because in the later episodes, we'd spot that Grumble is sick, and so he needs a howl to kind of lift his spirits. But so Grumble is to have this howling choir. It's like, you know what? It's missing something. There's something that's just like not right about this song. And Nikki goes and takes this chalkboard. It's like, "Argh." And Grumble is just like, that was it. That, like, dang, Ickis, like, you're impressing me, buddy. All right, like, you're the all-star of the day. And Nikki is just like, all right, like, I'm just working these guys. I don't know how this is going, but I'm finding my confidence. So we turn around and up on the opposite angle. Ickis. Ickis goes into Nikki's school, and we would come to find out there is to be some kind of speech of some sort where people are to come up to the front of the class and are to talk about their home lives or their lives or their routines of sorts. So Ickis comes up first, and he's to mention how like his home has a great uh selection of garbage, and that his house is a dump. And the more and more the kids are laughing at everything that he's going on and stating, and so he's like trying to like get into this further and further. To him, all of this is to be the truth, but to them it sounds more like a joke. So Ickis is like, okay, like you've said enough, you've done enough. So Ickis at one point tries to get back to, I believe, his chair, and one person is to give him crap. Ickis chews off a portion of this guy's chair. It falls. Ha ha ha. Another joke to be had this day. So, Ickis goes through his school day, wraps it up. So, Ickis, the more and more is still be in costume because he's forced to. Jake ends up taking off this hat of Ickis because it's like, hey man, like, you're still in that costume. So Jake at this point really just wants to go on and flush himself down this toilet and to hope to get himself back to Oblina and Crumb. But at some point he is to be stopped by Jake and his friends. So Oblina and Crumb are to return Nikki to his home. So Ickis is to grow seemingly on a normal larger size, and it's to scare all of the youngins, and it's to run off to the toilet to want to go and flush it. Nikki makes his way back to Jake, who is cowering under this bed, and Nikki tells Jake, it's like, oh, did you see a bunny? So Ickis, who is almost in the toilet right now, getting flushed, ends up seeing his friends, and so he is to see them out this window, and so he rejoins them and is to make his way back to the school. So Grumble is to go on and tell the students that he knows someone had gone out. He feels it that someone had gone out. So he's gonna figure out who it is. And so Ickis is to go on and tell his group, it's like, yeah, nobody is gonna piece this together. Nobody's gonna figure it out. And Grumble ends up bringing up a monster to have tortured and found the answer. And Ickis is just like, oh man, we've been had. So the Grumble is to have shown these horrors, these three magical doors. The like this is bad, this is really bad, and you don't want to know. So the Grumble is continuing to show these three door-like locations. Some look like garbage compactors, and all these just kind of like whatever can be the most horrific looking doors. But then also the third one where it's like, okay, you don't even want to know what that is, because it's just like the nicest looking neighborhoodish like door, but then also could just be somewhat compared to the video game The Neighbor kind of house. It's just very obscure. So the Grumble is to just be like, okay, Oblina, Ickis, Crumb, I know it was you. I know it was you all along. So, holy badonkadonk, almost an hour. Oh my god, we've only gone through one episode. Whew! I'm gonna do it anyways. It's okay. Whew. So the Grumble is to figure out who it is. It's all the three of the main. And so he's like, okay, you all stand up. It's like, you are going to be the best and brightest leaders of all of these people because you defied my orders and you went out anyways, and you're the real monsters. Hence the title. But I'm still going to punish you anyways for disobeying me. So the three monsters are looking at the doors, and Ickis is like, well, what's the third one? Like, what is the third one again? What is that one about? So that's the way of which that the just kind of episode plays out. So in the second episode, Bradley. Bradley is to be this monster book reading kid who is sleeping in his bed, is to toss to the side, is to show us a little bit of his butt crack. So Ickis is underneath the bed, getting his fangs out, getting his manual out, trying to figure out what is the best scare approach. And by the time that Ickis gets kind of raring to go, Bradley is to kind of overhear things, is to kind of make his way to look under his bed. The two are to kind of just almost kind of right into it, one another. Ickis gets scared. He runs around. He runs off. So we'd have Bradley, who's also terrified. At some point in the later parts of this two-parter, he ends up not wanting to even go back into his room. That's how terrified he is. So, back to the School of Grumble. So, we'd also in the first episode have like certain monsters, like one is to kind of just spin its head around, and is to kind of show two sides of its head, which immediately came off to be like Nightmare Before Christmas to me, and I almost kind of forgot that little piece, a little nugget. But anyways, moving right along. Grumble, of course, is to just consistently talk about like scaring the pants off of anybody. And so at some point again, we're to go into the brain scan chair, and Ickis is to be battering up for this. So I think also at one point, like Oblina is to have a good scare as well. But she's just really good at this. But I always kind of forget her a lot in this story because I feel like there's not enough about her right now. But so Ickis is to go into the chair, and he's to forget a memento, and it is to have been his monster manual. And Grumble is to not only see him fail at scaring, but then is to fail at obtaining his manual. Grumble is to say, it's like, well, hey, at least you were to have read your manual, but still, like, you didn't perform well. So Grumble is telling Mikus, it's like, I better see you have that book. The next time I see you, you better have this thing, or Snorch is going to be taking you down to horrific means. So, paraphrasing, of course, that's what I do. That's how I roll. So, Ickis is just like, well, okay, like, how about I have my friends help me out and try to get this book? And Ickis's friends is like, no, like we can't do that. Like, that's really like us helping you with this project. But Ickis is like, well, hey, how about like I watch you do this scare, and then I kind of like learn from that. And they're like, again, we're doing your job. So it's like, okay, so Ickis goes on to try and get this book, and so there's a bit of a scramble between these books and easily get them confused. And Ickis obtains the book, and he's all happy, and he's like, all right, yeah, like I did it, it's all great. And he starts reading the book, and he realizes that it's some police book, and he's like, oh crap. So the very next day, Ickis is like, how am I going to get this book? How am I going to get the time? So Ickis ends up talking to his locker, as well as also talking to Slimeball and Snork and all these other characters, goofily enough. So Ickis talks to his locker, and his locker ends up telling him, it's like, oh yeah, Grumble, he's sick today. Like, don't worry, he's not even at school. And so Ickis is like, oh, thank God. So I'm relieved. Ooh, yeah. So Ickis walks off, so the locker ends up talking to the other locker, and it's like, hey man, Grumble is here, but like this kid, like he needs to get disciplined. He needs to get kind of down a peg. So Ickis goes to school and he realizes that Grumble is there. He's like, oh my god, he's sweating. Oh, so Grumble, of course, is to get down to the nitty gritty here. Grumble is to, of course, ask for the book because he doesn't have the book. So it's like, well, like you're gonna go on and you're gonna get snorched, buddy. You're gonna get snorched. So there seems to be some kind of weird assembly line going on here. Some weird line going on for having Ickis needing to wait to get snorched. So wait for him to just be dealt with. So he's at first number 61, so he's like, hey man, I have all the time in the world. It's like, no, you don't have as much time as you think because you're number 19 instead of 61. So Ickis is like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to get this book. There's no way. So Oblina and Crumb make their way to get this book for Ickis. And there's to be all these kids in the room. And so Oblina and Crumb are scrambling. They end up turning into these kind of absurd, kind of action figure toy looking things. Or Oblina turns this little kind of cane thing for them to just kind of smack these balls around and smack these things around. So the two other main monsters go on to obtain this book, run their way back to the scare school, or the junk. You can probably go on and just call this the junkyard because that's the main, I think, place where they all end up. But I'm too much into the scare school now to adjust. So I've been too far into this. So the two Crumb and Oblina make their way back to be like, hey, yeah, like we have the book, Ickis, here you go. And Ickis is like, well, yeah, now I'm saved, I've done it. Oh yeah, this is great. And Grumble is just like, well, yeah, Ickis, you do have the book, you do. But here's the thing. You had your friends go on and do this assignment for you. So guess what? Still disciplined, still tortured. So really, yeah, like that's to be the end of that tale is like, well, danged if you do, danged if you don't. Also, the title of the second episode was to, of course, be Monsters Get Real and Snorched If You Do, Snorched If You Don't. So, third episode is to be Curse of the Crumb. Crumb goes Hollywood. He's not going in space. Well, that's good, I guess. So, the beginning of this, all three of the main monsters make their way to this amusement park. They're rolling in this garbage, huge pile, and dipping their way through all these garbages to get all this trash. And they're having a heck of a time. And Crumb is to say that this is the best day that he's ever had. And so they're waiting till midnight for it to be legitimately Crumb's birthday. So Crumb, it seems, is to find that there is to be this freak show character going on called Wendell. So they make their way to Wendell to come to find that this guy is to be the worst smelling person in the world. And Crumb is like, well, I think I have that title. But then he goes into Wendell and realizes, like, oh my god. And so Crumb is to even go on and unleash his armpit smell upon Wendell to freak him out and have him go running off into the ether of things. But then we come to find the very next day that Crumb is to lose his smell. Like he smells clean. So Ickis is going on in his wardrobe and kind of getting ready for the day. and Oblina is cleaning her teeth with this purple stuff. Maybe it's purple drink. So they go on to real like, okay, like, all right, like, so like, you don't smell now, like, you can't go to class obviously, but you need to go to class. And so Crumb is like, no, I can't. So Crumb shows up at class with these socks, and Grumble notices it, and he's just like, what the heck? Like, like, not only can none of you people scare the pants off anybody, but this guy's wearing socks. So Grumble was to realize with these socks come these smells. There's this dead fish. There's uh, these scent-like things. So Grumble is to figure out that Crumb does not have his smell. So it's like, hey man, like, I don't even want you to come back here unless you have the smell. So Crumb makes his way to meet with Horvath, his father, and Crumb is to have a heart to heart with his dad and just be like, hey man, I lost my scent, I lost some smell. And Horvath is just like, well, like, yeah, that is the curse of the Crumb. Like, I thought I was gonna skip a generation, but I guess I was wrong. So Crumb is to be left to be this guy who is kind of bringing all these people across this kind of watery uh, path here. And both Ickis and Oblina are talking to Crumb, distracting him while an elderly guy is wanting to pass, and then he gets in the water and he just kind of just flies off on his own. So all this is to have Crumb being convinced that he needs to go back to class, or that he needs to kind of just figure out how to get his smell back. So while these characters are going on and try to figure this whole thing out, they start to possibly think that maybe if Crumb can just kind of think that he cannot, of course, or that if he thinks that he can smell, then he will smell. So we'd have Crumb again, uh, like going to the amusement park, and so Crumb turns around and he scares people, and he ends up getting his mojo back. So Crumb in this episode is to also have gone on to scare this couple that are close to locking lips, and he ends up getting between them with his armpits with his smell, and frightens the two of them, and they run off. And Grumble is to kind of grade Crumb. I'm like, yeah, like, you did it, buddy, and you smell bad. So the second half of this third episode, we'd have this bug monster that is to be Marty. Marty is to go on and kind of trip on this banana peel while trying to scare this person. He's going on and turning to this JB character, who's this director, and so I'm like, Marty, like, what are you doing? So luckily, we'd have these three main monsters that are getting to this movie set. Luckily. And JB ends up spotting Crumb right away. And it's like, well, hey, man, like, I need you for my next picture. Like, I'm assuming that you're the fill-in. So Crumb goes right into this movie set, and Crumb doesn't know what he's going to do. So they tell him, it's like, well, hey, man, just scare her. He's like, oh, just scare her? And so he's just like, ah. She's like, ah, and she falls over, she faints. It's like, okay, cut, you did it, buddy, you did it. And they're really just like greasing the wheels of this Crumb guy. He's giving them all uh, of everything that he used to go on and need, even a wheel and junk, and fill this all in his trailer. So Oblina and Ickis talk to Crumb. It's like, well, hey man, like at some point you're gonna need to go back to class. And Crumb is like, no, I'm successful. Maybe I don't even need to do that. Maybe I can just keep doing this. They're like, no man, like somebody's gonna find out that you're a real monster. And he's like, well, like we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So, and also like Ickis is telling Crumb, it's like, hey, like Grumble is gonna come after you. And the further and further that Crumb doesn't show up, Crumble does go after Crumb. It's like, hey man, like why isn't Crumb here? Okay, let's check this out. Crumb is to meet up with this actor, and he starts to really get to understand show business a little bit more, to realize that it's all just an act, and Crumb slowly but surely starts to realize that like he's starting to hate this business, and so he's packing up his things and he's leaving. And JB's like, no, don't leave, don't leave. I need you for this movie, and it's like, nope. So Crumb makes his way back to both Ickis and uh, Oblina, and is like, hey man, like you need one more in this place. It's like, yeah man, come on back. And Crumb ends up finding out that uh, that Grumble was looking for Crumb, and Crumb was like, "Well, I didn't see him." Come to find out, the next monster doing this movie was to have been Grumble himself, and that's how like the episode just kind of plays out. So that said, really just trying to fast speed through the rest of this, and plus also somehow or another I made it. Looks like we made it, guys. Cheers, everybody. Oh my god. Yeah. So with that said, I'm gonna stop this. I feel I got to most of this. Um, but hey, if there is to be anything that I probably forgot, there's probably gonna be a video right after this. But I feel just good enough with all I said. I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.